Hey folks, Dave the Not So Evil Viking 13 here, and for the last few weeks, I've been putting a lot of hours into Fallout 4 like a lot of you. Additionally, like most Bethesda games, it didn't take long for me to start diving into the modding scene. And after a few weeks of playing with some of my favorite immersion-friendly mods, I wanted to share some with you guys. In games like Fallout 4, my favorite kind of mods are the ones that do generally obey the rules of the world and the lore that's been set forth by the developers. So, all of the mods that you see here are mods that improve on the base gameplay without totally breaking the rules of the universe. That's just my style, and I hope you guys enjoy. Let's start things off here with a simple tweak that I think everyone's been talking about because it was one of the first mods that was released: lowered weapons. Generally, as you're running around in Fallout 4 with no mods, you keep your weapon pointed straight in front of you. This not only takes up quite a bit of your field of vision, but it also looks a little bit ridiculous when you're talking to people with a pistol or a giant shotgun shoved right in their face. This mod, quite simply, lowers your weapon in first person to more of a resting or marching or moving stance. You are still able to quickly fire from the hip, and it looks a little bit weird because the animation kind of just starts right there as if it was still pointed directly forward, but it still works well and fast, and there's no real delay. To me, a bit of wonkiness with the firing from the hip is okay if I get to wander around without a weapon pointed right out in front of me the entire time. Next up, we have more armor slots, and this one I really love because it lets you actually make good use of all those cool armors that you find in the wasteland that generally don't offer enough protection to actually wear constantly. This lets you take the individual armor pieces like combat armor, or metal armor, or leather armor, including unique ones of those, and add them on top of unique outfits. For example, you could wear the Surveyor outfit and put combat armor on top of it. Or, one of my favorite combos, I generally wear the Traveling Leathers with this cool looking backpack, and then some leather armor or some combat armor that goes along with it. A couple of things to keep in mind if you do decide to use this mod: be careful not to get too overpowered early on in the game because you can stack armor pretty quickly. Just don't make things too easy for you if you actually want to have a challenge in the game. There are of course some clipping issues. Some of the additional armor does occasionally clip through some of the unique sets, and that's of course why Bethesda didn't want you to equip those on top of your base outfits. Next up is a mod that kind of saved interior exploration for me. I would completely avoid using the PIPBOY light in the vanilla and unmodded version of Fallout 4. This is because the PipBoy light, by default, casts absolutely zero shadows of any kind. This results in a light when you're exploring an interior that just looks completely washed out and just not great overall. The PipBoyShadows mod turns your PipBoy's light into an actual in-game dynamic directional light. This simply means that it actually does cast real light and real shadows right there from your PipBoy on your arm. Like a lot of mods that can add to your immersive experience, there is a reason though that Bethesda did not have this enabled by default, and not just for performance. It's actually not much of a performance hit at all. Because the light is actually cast from your arm, as your character moves, the light can go a bit crazy at extreme angles. Especially in third person, expect the light to clip and freak out just a bit, but for me personally, I couldn't stand the look of the vanilla, washed out, shadowless PipBoy light. And I would much rather have the occasional glitchy shadows, but have those just strong lighting conditions while exploring interiors. That's definitely my preference. I hope you guys can see from this footage how stark the contrast is. It really does make a huge difference, and I highly recommend that you guys try this one out. Next up, we have a very small tweak to the graphics of Fallout 4 that in my opinion makes a huge difference. This mod is called Rain of Brass. By default, in unmodded Fallout 4, the brass cartridges that are expended from your weapons as you fire them disappear pretty quickly, generally within 3 or 4 seconds. So even though it's cool that all these shells actually are rendered in the world and bounce around like crazy, most of the time you don't even notice them because they're gone so quickly. What the Rain of Brass mod does is simply increase the amount of time that the brass is left in the world, just to increase the overall immersion of gunfights. And you might be thinking, okay, brass is pretty small, will I ever even really notice this? Well, I found that I actually did, and pretty frequently. If you guys are anything like me, after a long gunfight, you spend quite a bit of time staring at the ground, looting corpses and crates, and exploring the area that you just fought through. Let me tell you guys, it is so much cooler to have tons of different calibers of expended brass all over the place, all over counters and floors and in crevices as you're doing that post-battle looting. It's just a really cool effect, and if you have the PipBoy light mod that I talked about just a bit earlier, all of those individual pieces of brass actually are casting their own shadow too, and it looks pretty awesome. This is a slight change, but in my opinion, one that really does help me maintain my immersion in those post-battle looting frenzies. Alright, now let's talk about settlements and crafting. I have found the workshops in Fallout 4 to be one of the most compelling parts of the game. I love crafting my Fallout Sims settlement here in the Apocalypse, but there are memory limits, and there's limits to what you can actually build for your settlements. You can unlock a few new things to place as you explore the world, but not a whole lot. So, to address the limitations of the workshop in the default version of Fallout 4, I am now using two different mods. The first one that we're going to look at is simply called Settlements Expanded. This mod allows you to unlock the memory limit of your settlements and place more objects, and it also adds a number of new objects for you to place. To unlock the memory limit for your settlements, you want to actually manually download this file. Don't just use the Nexus Mod Manager, and unpack the text files into your Fallout 4 main directory. From there, in-game, you can go to the workshop at the settlement that you want to unlock, and click on the tilde to bring up the console, then click on the workbench itself, and run a bat command to run one of those text files. In this case, it is bat space expand settlement, and that will run the commands into your console for you, all in order to unlock that memory modifier. You may have to exit out of the console and the workshop itself and then go back in to see the changes, but as you can see there in the corner, the limitation memory bar for the workshop is now completely empty. This obviously opens up a ton more options for crafting in your settlements, but be warned, there are limits placed in the game for a reason, and the further that you push the game, the more unstable it might get. Back up your saves and don't go too crazy when building your settlements. I'm trying to keep things mostly conservative, but still, even trying to keep it conservative, I would bet that I have gone probably 2.5 or 3 times over the limit of Sanctuary, and 2 and 3 times over a few other settlements as well. I've only gotten one crash to desktop, no save game loss, and things seem to be pretty stable. Just be careful. And once you've removed that limit for your settlements and you want to keep decorating and expanding and making it look more awesome, there is a mod that allows you to place a ton more objects into your settlements. This one is called Settlement Supplies Expanded. It adds a large amount of buildable objects, at least if you have the supplies for them, like I frequently don't. And it adds things like new cars from before the war. It adds refrigerators and all kinds of awesome wooden bridges and platforms, and a lot of the objects that you can see around the world, and objects that are pre-placed in other settlements. Now, me being me, I tried to keep all of my custom objects lore-friendly and immersion-friendly, but I had to place at least one of those new trucks under my carport with a spotlight on it. I mean, come on. I'm sure I could find one of those in a showroom buried somewhere or in a metal container not totally rusted out, right? That's not totally immersion breaking. But anyway, Settlement Supplies Expanded version 2.5, as I make this video, does give you a ton more options for working on your settlements. Well, there you have it, guys. That's my list of, in my opinion, must-have immersion mods for Fallout 4. that's enough chatter for me. I'm heading back into the wasteland. I have more settlements to upgrade. Thanks for watching, guys, and be sure to stick around for hopefully more Fallout content in the future, as well as the other PC gaming, real-world firearms, and casual shenanigans that I usually upload on a week-to-week basis. You guys can find direct links to download each of these mods in the description, and each description on the Mods Nexus Workshop page does have detailed descriptions for how to install them. The instructions for installation do vary per mod, so I'm not going to cover them in this video. Just read carefully, pay attention, and you'll be just fine. Whenever possible, attempt to install your mods with the Nexus Mod Manager. I use it, and it's great for keeping things organized and for easy installation. I'll catch you guys next time.